case of Jessica Patel. Jessica Patel was born on September 16, 1983 in Leeds, West Yorkshire, England, where she grew up in a traditional Hindu community. As the eldest child, she developed a diligent and obedient nature from a young age. Jessica excelled academically, helped with household chores, and maintained a bright and cheerful personality. Jessica had a large social circle, but she was particularly close to a boy 3 years, her senior, who was more reserved and shy. They often spent time together, and as Jessica matured, she blossomed into a beautiful young woman. Like many of her peers, she longed to find true love and build a happy family, much like the characters in her favorite movies. However, her romantic aspirations did not detract from her intelligence and determination. To achieve her goals, Jessica pursued higher education. In 2002, she enrolled at De Montfort University in Leicester, and 4 years later, she began studying pharmacy at the University of Manchester. There, she reconnected with Mate, an acquaintance who coincidentally attended the same faculty. They initially had no romantic feelings for each other, but over time, it turned into true love. This relationship has helped Mitesh grow and become more confident in himself. He is also accumulating knowledge and becoming more mature. Mitesh was extremely kind and caring towards Jessica, showering her with compliments and gifts. However, their happiness was short-lived. Jessica's mother passed away due to an incurable illness, leaving her devastated. Mitesh stood by Jessica's side, providing emotional support and comfort during this difficult time. As a result, their bond grew stronger. Jessica confided in her sister that she had finally found a trustworthy partner. Mitesh seemed perfect in every way, and she envisioned a happy marriage. In 2008, Mitesh asked Jessica's father for permission to marry her following traditional Hindu customs. Although her father had reservations about Mitesh and felt that they were too young to get married, Jessica convinced him otherwise. They eventually got married in July 2009. The wedding was held in the beautiful garden of the bride's home. Initially, the newlyweds, Mitesh and Jessica, seemed like a perfect couple. However, things took a turn for the worse soon after. Mitesh's behavior changed dramatically, became distant and cold, leaving Jessica feeling lonely. Their intimate life also suffered, and they didn't have any physical relationship for about 10 months after their wedding. This was very distressing for Jessica, who couldn't understand why Mitesh's feelings towards her had changed so drastically. Jessica tried to find fault in herself, wondering if she was the reason for Mitesh's change in. Meanwhile, she had just graduated from university in 2010 and was looking forward to starting her career as a pharmacist. She has a good education and a promising career. However, Mitesh's attitude continued to deteriorate. He became increasingly controlling and suspicious, constantly monitoring Jessica's every move. In February, her family suffered another grief. Her grandfather falls ill. His health begins to decline rapidly, and death seems inevitable. Manal's husband does not allow Jessica to spend much time with her family. This was the root of the conflict between they. When Manal confronted her husband about this, he became angry and responded by punching her in the face. As a result, when her grandfather was seriously ill, Jessica was only able to visit him a few times. Jessica comes from a traditional Indian family where his word is the law, restricting her from making her own choices. She felt trapped in a lonely marriage. One day, she confided in her family about her concerns. She expressed her suspicion that her husband, Mitesh, was being unfaithful. She noticed that whenever he received a phone call, he would excuse himself to another room. Additionally, he often stayed up late, spending hours alone, which further fueled her doubts. In 2012, Jessica's suspicions about her husband's infidelity were confirmed when she discovered romantic messages on his phone. Seeking help, she confided in Mitesh's cousin, with whom she had a good relationship. Instead of offering help or advice, the cousin blamed Jessica for her husband's behavior, implying that she was responsible for his infidelity. This response from Mitesh's cousin left Jessica feeling isolated and unsupported. To make matters worse, Mitesh also prohibited her from seeking comfort from her own sisters. It became clear that Mitesh was hiding something and trying to maintain his reputation and authority within the family and local community. In 2014, Mitesh and Jessica relocated to Lynor, a suburb of Middlesbrough in North Yorkshire, in an effort to start anew and distance themselves from their family. They purchased a large house, made renovations, and later opened their own pharmacy. Jessica had hoped that this fresh start would bring positive changes to their relationship. While their relationship did improve slightly, one thing was still missing: children. For 6 years, Jessica struggled with infertility, and Mitesh made veiled threats that he would leave her if she didn't become pregnant. In October 2015, she decided to go through in vitro fertilization. However, the initial attempts were unsuccessful, causing her to become increasingly anxious and depressed, especially with the added stress of hormone treatments. To make matters worse, Mitesh's behavior changed. He became distant and cold towards her at home. He would only show affection in public, and even then, it seemed superficial. He was often preoccupied with his phone, and the tension between them became unbearable. She reached her breaking point and suggested they separate, confessing that she was unhappy in the marriage. Mitesh's response caught her off guard. He claimed to love her and promised that things would improve over time. He even suggested that having a baby would strengthen their family bond. Jessica believed his words. For a moment. She felt comforted and listened to, and her doubts subsided. On May 9, 2018, Mitesh and Jessica Patel received the exciting news that 3 of their embryos had been successfully fertilized, with a transfer scheduled for the following month. Jessica was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a mother and eagerly shared the news with her family. Tragically, their happiness was short-lived. A few days later, on the evening of May 14, 2018, Mitesh Patel made a frantic call to the emergency services, reporting that he had found his wife's body at their home. He claimed that he had left the house earlier to buy food and pick up his laptop from work. When he returned home, he found that the house had been burglarized and Jessica was lying unconscious on the living room floor. Mitesh told police that Jessica's skin was cold to the touch and there were bruises on her neck. He was clearly distressed, crying as he spoke. Police assured him that rescuers were on the way. When the officers arrived, they found Jessica's body on the living room floor, her wrists and ankles bound with duct tape. A grocery bag was nearby. Despite the medical team's efforts, Jessica died on the scene. The investigators sought to determine the motive behind the heinous crime. Upon examination, they found that the house had been thoroughly ransacked, with drawers and closets turned upside down. It was evident that the perpetrators had been searching for valuables, as they had even torn apart their bed mattress. The missing jewelry and cash further supported the notion that the primary motive was robbery. Jessica's husband, Mite, also believed that their house had been targeted by robbers. According to Mate's statement, on the day of the incident, he followed his usual routine, working a morning shift, going to the gym and returning home afterward. His wife came home around 7 p.m. Later, Mitesh decided to order pizza and left the house at 7:44 p.m. Surveillance footage from a nearby pizzeria corroborated his alibi. Before leaving the pizzeria, he tried to call his wife to tell her he was on his way home, but no one picked up. Mitesh stopped at a pharmacy without notice, so he returned home later than expected. When Mitesh returned home at 8:50 p.m., he was met with a gruesome scene. His wife was bound, and their belongings were scattered everywhere. Neighbors was left reeling after the tragic event. This neighborhood is known as a wealthy and peaceful place and has never had a crime before. The autopsy report revealed that Jessica's cause of death was strangulation, with the attacker using a bagged, bare hands and an electrical cord to ensure her demise. Since there were no signs of forced entry, investigators initially suspected that Jessica knew her attacker and had let them into the house. Jessica's family quickly arrived and comforted Mate, who appeared to be extremely sad and lost over the passing of his wife. However, the police had their suspicions, and a thorough search of the house uncovered some crucial clues that would eventually lead to the capture and trial of the perpetrator. A health monitoring app on Jessica's phone also played an important role in finding the truth. 3 days after Jessica's murder, the lead investigator contacted her father, who was still near the crime scene, and asked him and other relatives to return home so as not to interfere with the ongoing investigation. The investigator promised to provide more information later. Meanwhile, detectives were preparing to arrest the prime suspect in the case, Mitesh Patel. Several key pieces of evidence had led them to this conclusion. During the search of the crime scene, police found a damaged hard drive from a surveillance camera installed in front of the front door. The device was discovered in a suitcase under the bed. Further investigation uncovered a hidden photograph in their nightstand that showed Mitesh embracing another man named Amit. Additionally, footage from a camera across the street revealed that only Mitesh and Jessica entered and exited their home on the day of the murder, May 14th. The footage shows that Mitesh returned home at 3:30 p.m. Jessica arrived home from work at 7 p.m. and Mitesh left the house briefly to pick up pizza at 7:44 p.m., returning at 8:50 p.m. Since no one else was seen entering or leaving the house, the evidence pointed to one conclusion. Mitesh was the likely perpetrator. Mitesh was the prime suspect in the investigation, but the police lacked concrete evidence against him. As the detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a shocking secret that Mitesh had carefully kept hidden. Jessica had suspected that her husband was being unfaithful and her instincts were correct. However, it was not what she expected. Mitesh was hiding his true sexual orientation. His marriage to Jessica was just a cover, a way to hide his true feelings for other men. 2 years into their marriage, Mitesh met Amit, an Indian man who was openly gay. Despite their cultural differences, they men quickly fell in love and secretly met each other whenever Mitesh was away on business. Unbeknownst to Jessica, her husband was leading a double life, pretending to be the perfect spouse while carrying on an illicit affair. In 2016, moved to Australia, but Amit and Mitesh continued their relationship. Mitesh had had a plan to become same-sex parents with Amit by using Jessica's embryos and finding a surrogate. Mitesh had informed Amit that Jessica was having in vitro fertilization, IVF, and had asked if they could be together after this plan, to which Amit had replied that it would depend on the results. Mitesh confided in Amit, stating that eventually there would be no more obstacles in their relationship. In a message, Mitesh chillingly wrote, "Jessica's days are numbered." It was later discovered that Mitesh was secretly taking fertility-affecting medication to avoid intimate relations with Jessica. The investigation revealed that Mitesh's internet search history was reconstructed. He had searched for how to get rid of his wife, Hindu funeral, and procedure for obtaining insurance payments for the murder of a spouse. Notably, Jessica had a £2 million life insurance policy. After her death, Mate planned to claim the money and use it to buy a property in Australia. In the weeks leading up to Jessica's death, Mate had been actively searching for a new home, aiming to create a comfortable environment for his future family. Investigators analyzed their cell phones and found incriminating messages. They also discovered a fitness app that tracked the number of steps taken by Jessica's. The data showed that Jessica's phone had not moved since 8:04 p.m. However, 15 minutes later, the phone recorded 14 steps, suggesting that either Jessica had made her last movements or someone had moved the device. In contrast, Mitesh's phone data revealed high physical activity and an elevated heart rate in the period leading up to his wife's murder, which was unusual for him. Between 7:44 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., Jessica's husband, Mitesh, walked up and down the stairs multiple times, creating false evidence of a burglary by throwing objects around the house. Before calling 911, he went upstairs to conceal evidence, including a hard drive from a surveillance camera in the safe of the pharmacy he and his wife owned. During the police investigation, they found stolen jewelry, £25,000, and a couple of gold bars, which Mitesh claimed had been taken during the robbery. They also discovered a roll of duct tape similar to the one used to bind the victim's arms and legs. The torn end of the tape matched the piece taken as evidence from Jessica's body. To create an alibi, Mitesh had to go to his workplace the evening after the pizza party. Despite planning for years, he was remarkably careless and left a trail of evidence behind. Furthermore, DNA analysis found under Jessica's fingernails showed that it matched Mitesh's DNA. Mitesh had scratched marks on his neck, which he attributed to a fall. During the investigation and subsequent trial, Mitesh, the accused, denied any wrongdoing. He claimed that his interactions with Jessica were mere coincidence. The 3-week trial strung together the developments in the case. It was established that he attacked his wife as soon as she entered the house. She fought back and scratched the attacker but was eventually controlled. Initially, Mitesh had planned to kill his wife by administering the lethal dose of insulin. However, this method takes a long time to be effective and there is a risk that the plan will be discovered. Ensure a quicker outcome, Mitesh suffocated his wife by putting a bag over her head. To make sure his wife was dead, he strangled her with his hands and then used a rope. The prosecution presented physical evidence, including empty ampoules found in Mitesh Patel's laptop bag, which linked him to the crime. Mitesh brutally murdered his wife, Jessica, in their home, a place they had shared for years. The entire ordeal took only 20 minutes. He then brutally tied her up to create the appearance that she had been robbed. Following the murder, Mate went about his day as usual, even stopping at a pizza place and calling Jessica's phone. The news of her death left both families in shock and disbelief. Tragically, Jessica had been seeking help in the months leading up to her murder, but her cries for aid were ignored. Only her sister seemed worried, but they couldn't do much to help either. The jury deliberated for 2 hours before delivering a guilty verdict. On December 5, 2018, the court sentenced Mitesh Patel to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Mitesh showed no remorse for his actions, and it seemed that the only person he felt sorry for was himself. The family was still grappling with the loss of Jessica's death, remembering her in their daily prayers and cherishing the happy moments they had shared together. It is unlikely that they will ever forgive Mitesh for his heinous crime. According to Hindu beliefs, her soul must be reborn. Since she suffered a lot in life and was unhappy but remained a good person, in the next incarnation, she will be rewarded. At least that was a comfort to her loved ones. In October 2009, the Jamison family lived in the town of Eufaula, Oklahoma, and consisted of Bobby, his wife Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter Madison and dog Macy. On October 8th, they loaded their pickup truck and headed into Oklahoma's Sands Boys Mountains. The family traveled 30 miles to a 40-acre plot of land that they were thinking of buying in an area called Red Oak. The plan was to live off-grid in a storage shed that they owned until they could build on the land. They visited an associate of the landowner, and when the meeting was done, the family went for a short walk for about 15 minutes. GPS from the phone showed that they walked away from the truck, took a picture of Madison in the remote area, and then returned to the truck not long after. After they returned to their vehicle, they drove a little further, and then with the truck left locked in the middle of a dirt track, they vanished. 9 days later, on October 17th, hunters came across the Jamisons' abandoned truck northwest of Red Oak and called police to report the vehicle because it had a dog locked inside. They quickly rescued the thirsty and Mount Arish dog. The truck was about an hour's drive from the Jamisons' home in Eufaula. The family was nowhere to be seen despite a large search of the area around the truck. The sheriff at first thought that the truck had been stolen, but soon realized something far more serious had taken place. He launched one of the largest search operations in Oklahoma history. It consisted of 1,000 volunteers, 13 dog teams, helicopters, horses, mules, ATVs, and an unmanned drone, and they found nothing. During the searches, the cadaver dog teams repeatedly found scent near a nearby water tower, which was then drained and searched, but nothing was found. Police searched the truck and found Bobby and Sherilyn's cell phones, $32,000 in cash in a bank bag under the seat, maps, a GPS, Sherilyn's purse, wallets, and empty pill bottles. The vehicle was in working order, had fuel, and hadn't been in an accident. The only thing missing was a brown briefcase and the .22 caliber gun that Sherilyn was known to keep in the truck. The $32,000 in cash was puzzling because the couple were both on disability at the time. Some wonder if it was to buy the land or something more sinister like drug dealing. In the truck, investigators found an 11-page hate letter from Sherilyn to Bobby where she claimed he didn't care about his daughter. She listed all the things she hated about him, including that he was a loner and a hermit and that she wanted a divorce. During their initial investigations, Police found no signs of a struggle in the vehicle nor on the soft ground around the truck. There was no blood, but their belongings were strewn about the truck. Also, it was parked in such a way that it appeared that they were leaving and were stopped by somebody. About a week after the truck was found and identified, investigators searched the family home. They came upon an extensive outside surveillance system which was less common in 2009 than it is today. Some speculate this was due to a drug ring, but their family said it was due to Bobby's father often threatening him and they were afraid and that the couple were not involved in illegal drugs. However, they did say the couple had lost an unhealthy amount of weight. Video surveillance from the day the family left the home was reviewed. The video shows Bobby and Sherry Lynn walking back and forth around 30 times from their house to their truck loading items. Sometimes they weren't even carrying anything at all, and they even changed clothes multiple times. They were seen putting things in the truck and then returning it to the house and then back to the truck. It gets even stranger because at times they would stop and stand with a blank look on their faces. A psychologist reviewed the footage and stated that the couple appeared to be on drugs. 6 years earlier in 2003, Bobby had a car accident that left him with chronic back pain and on painkillers. Sherry Lynn suffered from bipolar disorder but was non-compliant with her meds, so she often experienced bouts of severe depression and anger issues. Her mother said that her mental state declined 2 years prior when her sister passed away. Also, the marriage was said to be intramural and the family kept to themselves. Bobby and Sherry Lynn had spoken to a local pastor about their belief that their home was invaded by dark spirits and that an exorcism might be needed. This was because Madison had started talking to an imaginary friend named Emily, and Sherry Lynn believed Emily was actually a malevolent entity. At one point, Bobby asked the pastor if he knew where he could purchase special bullets to shoot a handful of spirits whom he said were living on the roof of the family's home. Bobby was also planning on trying to exorcise the spirits in the home with the help of a copy of the Satanic Bible that he had purchased and Sherry Lynn on a witch's Bible. All 3 members of the family said they often saw spirits in the home and Sherry Lynn was a self-proclaimed witch. A friend of Sherry Lynn's told the police that she sometimes conducted seances with Sherry Lynn, though Sherry Lynn took them much more seriously than she did. Both friends and family agreed with the Jamisons that their home was haunted, and a few have shared that they too experienced odd things inside the house. Sherry Lynn's best friend, Nikki, said when she visited the home, she felt a horrible presence and would leave feeling down and depressed. Sherry Lynn had also written graffiti on their storage container that they planned to live in about her black cats being poisoned, as she believed that someone from the neighborhood had killed her cats. One read, 3 cats killed to date by people in this area. Another read, witches don't like their black cat killed. Sherry Lynn believed that her neighbors had been poisoning their cats, so she wrote on the container to scare them off. A series of events occurred throughout 2009 that took a toll on the family. Madison suffered an injury at school from a swing, which resulted in Bobby and Sherry Lynn pulling Madison out of school and filing a lawsuit against the school. In July 2009, Sherry Lynn's ex-husband from her first marriage took custody of their son Colton. And in September, Sherry Lynn was hospitalized following a failed suicide attempt. During the custody hearing, 12-year-old Colton said he would prefer to live with his dad. And he gave a statement about his mother claiming that she had seemed very depressed, and that she often acted strangely. Finally, in August, they dealt with a maintenance man by the name of Kenneth Bellows, who was also a family friend who lived with the family in exchange for helping around the house due to Bobby's deteriorating physical condition. Sherry Lynn's relationship with Kenneth took a turn for the worst when he found out about her Native American heritage because he was a white supremacist. She allegedly shot into the ground next to his feet and ordered him to leave. However, he was in jail at the time the family disappeared. For years later, on November 16, 2013, less than 3 miles from where the truck was located, deer hunters discovered the skeletal remains of 2 adults and 1 child. They were in the Smokestack Hollow area of Panola Mountain. The bodies were found lined up side by side with their faces down. Forensic testing confirmed 8 months later that the remains were Bobby, Sherry Lynn, and Madison Jamison. Investigators found a flower lying next to Madison's body in the remote area. When questioned why the initial searches did not locate their bodies, Police stated that falling leaves potentially obscured the bodies. Some speculate whether the bodies were actually missed during one of the largest searches in Oklahoma history or were they placed there later. Due to only being skeletal remains, a cause of death could not be determined. However, the coroner did find a small hole in Bobby's skull that might have been from a bullet, but neither Sherry Lynn nor Madison had any gunshot evidence. The coroner said that it could also have been caused by animal activity, but some people disagree with this. The gun that was possibly used to kill Bobby was never found. Sherilyn's mother, Connie, claims her daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter were on an Oklahoma cult hit list. Connie didn't provide the name of the alleged cult, nor have police found any links to one, but it is allegedly a white supremacist cult, and it was thought that the man that Sherry Lynn had a falling out with over her heritage put a hit out on the family. The area of Oklahoma where the Jamisons lived, as well as the area they were hoping to move to in the Sans Boys Mountains, is well known for Matthews. Bobby had recently reported someone in the local area for running a meth lab prior to their murders. One theory is that the Jamisons came upon illegal drug activity, saw more than they were supposed to, and were killed to keep them quiet. But why didn't the dealers search the truck and take the valuables? After a search of the house, police found no drug paraphernalia and no evidence they were taking meth or any other illegal substances. Another theory by many is that the family was killed by Bobby's father, Bob Dean Jamison. The family had filed a protective order against him, claiming that he had threatened to kill them over some business dealings. In the protective order filed in April 2009, Bobby alleged that his father had intentionally hit him with his car on November 1, 2008, and that he was a very dangerous man who thinks he is above the law, and that he was involved in prostitutes, gangs, meth, and even the Mexican mafia. Bobby and his father had a long-running feud regarding the proceeds from the sale of a gas station. Bobby accused his father of reneging on an agreement to give him half the proceeds from the sale. Bobby's father died 2 months after the family went missing, and police ruled him out as a suspect. Bobby's uncle said that Bob Dean was a disturbed individual, but not capable of murder. When police examined Bobby's phone from the truck, they found a final picture of Madison taken up on the mountain. The family's pastor, Gary Brandon, told police during the initial investigation that the family had been involved in spiritual warfare from what Sherry Lynn said was the spirits of a long-dead family that was living with them. The remains of an old abandoned vehicle were found near where the family truck was found. It was used for shooting practice by locals, and written on it were satanic messages. Police ruled out murder-suicide because no gun was located at the scene, although Sherry Lynn could have shot Bobby, hid the gun, and then poisoned herself and her daughter. The question still remains, what happened to the brown briefcase the couple was seen loading into their truck that day? Some think they got lost and succumbed to the elements, but why were their bodies not found during the search? With Bobby's bad back, it's doubtful they would have planned to go on a long hike or adventure. The medical examiner ruled their cause of death as inconclusive, and the case has become one of America's most bizarre mysteries. After many years, the question still remains, were they murdered, lost in the woods, or was it a murder-suicide? Blackburn family, on the morning of November 10, 2015, a car was parked outside a home on Sunnyfield Court. Davy Blackburn had returned from his daily gym workout. Just as he was about to step out of his car, a phone call delayed him for a few minutes. After concluding the call, Davy leisurely exited his vehicle and entered his house. Upon opening the door, he froze. His gym bag slipped from his hands. His wife lay on the living room floor in a pool of blood. Confused and deeply shocked, he rushed to her side for an examination, felt for a pulse, and immediately dialed emergency services. The young woman was still alive, though the living room was in disarray. Items scattered everywhere, and her purse emptied. Upstairs, their small child was crying. Emergency services arrived within 8 minutes. Police officers and investigators filled the house right after it got cordoned off. Amanda Blackburn was urgently transported to the hospital. Now let's pivot back to understand more about Amanda's background so we don't miss vital details of this tragic story. Amanda Grace Bears was born on July 31, 1987 in Muskegon, Michigan. She went to school in Indianapolis, Indiana until her family moved to Elkhart in 1995. There she graduated from Elkhart Christian Academy in 2006, and later earned an associate degree from Pensacola Christian College in Florida by 2008. Amanda grew up in a deeply religious family, where Christianity and God's teachings were central tenets of their lives. Her father served as the lead pastor at First Baptist Church in Elkhart. Thus, church sermons and psalter were ingrained in her from childhood. She knew them by heart and honored them wholly. While other children raced toward adulthood's temptations like parties and first loves, Amanda's passion lay in her faith and her dream of serving Jesus faithfully. Amanda, a blonde-haired, slim girl with a welcoming smile and genuine intentions. Not just beautiful on the outside, Amanda's thoughts and heart were pure. In every action, she displayed love for her neighbor. As a teenager, she took a vow of chastity, promising not to even kiss a man until marriage. And she always kept her word. Amanda's heart raced when she met Davy Blackburn, her true love. A native of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Davy studied religion at Southern Wesleyan University and came from a devout Christian family. The two met on a blind date at a Hawk Nelson concert organized by Amanda's sister and Davy's best friend. At the time, they attended different colleges, but spent every vacation together. Their relationship was purely platonic and free from earthly desires. They enjoyed walks together and shared intimate thoughts and favorite excerpts from church books. Their bond grew stronger as they found joy in simple things and joked sincerely with each other. Once before returning to school, they had a playful milkshake drinking contest which Amanda lost. Davy teasingly called her Milk Girl, realizing then that she was the one he wanted to marry. The couple maintained a long-distance relationship for quite some time, constantly messaging via messengers, calling each other and chatting for hours. They spent every vacation together. Their respect for the seriousness of their relationship led them to see a psychologist to learn how to communicate properly. On August 1st, 2008, Amanda and Davy Blackburn were married. After the wedding, Davy told friends that from the moment he kissed Amanda, he knew there was a special bond between them, a part of God's plan. For the first 4 years after their marriage, the Blackburns lived in South Carolina, where Davy served as an associate pastor at New Spring Church under Pastor Perry Noble. But the young man wanted more, and he suggested to Amanda that she move to Indianapolis to organize a new church for youth. Amanda was reluctant to leave her family and part with her loved ones. For a time, she struggled with the need to leave South Carolina. Eventually, she relented after her husband told her that God must have big things in store for them. In 2012, the Blackburns moved from South Carolina to Indianapolis to plant an independent high-profile church on the city's north side. The religious organization started by the young family focused on young people, as made clear in the weekly videos they posted on their website, which discussed relationship advice, conflict resolution, and biblical perspectives on intimate relationships. By 2014, the family had welcomed their firstborn child, Weston Blackburn. They were perfectly happy with their comfortable home on a quiet street and their favorite roles within the church. This church was regularly attended by many young people who listened to and believed in their sermons. The family lived in perfect harmony and understanding. However, everything changed on November 10, 2015. Ambulance crews arrived at the Blackburn residence in the 2800 block of Sunnyfield Court around 8 a.m. The pregnant young woman was rushed to the hospital where she was hooked up to a ventilator and underwent several resuscitative. Sadly, Amanda died the next day along with her unborn baby. As it turned out, the family had been expecting a baby girl who was named Evie Grace at her burial. Her death sparked significant sympathy and prayers on social media over an extended period of time, as friends, family members, and strangers mourned Amanda with public posts. On November 11th, the day Amanda was officially declared dead, Davy released an official statement saying that Amanda made it her life's calling to love and serve everyone. She dedicated her life to knowing Jesus as her personal savior, and through passing and legacy, countless others will come to a saving faith in Christ. I firmly believe that God remains good, turning our tragedy into triumph, and that indeed the best is yet to come, Dave wrote. The murder of the pregnant woman was not only a devastating blow to the entire Orthodox family, but also a profound shock to the entire state. People demanded that those responsible for Amanda and her unborn child's death be brought to justice. In his first interview, Davy Blackburn recounted finding his wife Amanda injured and unconscious on the living room floor. She was partially unclothed, with her underwear lying nearby and herself lying face down in a pool of blood. The pastor informed investigators that he had left the house around 6 a.m. to go to the fitness center for a workout. When he departed, he left the door unlocked. He mentioned this habit during his statement, saying, "You always do that too, don't you? You leave and don't lock the door." While it's hard to say whether securing the door would have prevented this tragedy entirely, it's evident that it made entry much easier for the criminals involved. Unfortunately, Amanda did not have precious time to contact emergency services, resulting in an attack that left her with 3 gunshot wounds, one of them being fatal. No arrests were made in the days immediately following this heinous crime. However, police quickly determined that Davy Blackburn was not involved in this horrific incident. Trial transcripts reveal additional details from Davy Blackburn's testimony, alongside accounts from witnesses such as Scott Floyd, an emergency medical paramedic from the Indianapolis Fire Department who arrived at their home following Davy's 911 call. According to Scott Floyd's testimony, upon arrival they found Davy Blackburn outside at the end of the driveway with blood on his hands, but maintaining a very calm demeanor. Scott Floyd stated that Blackburn appeared not to fully comprehend what had transpired with Amanda when they reached him at their residence. Davy claimed he came home from the gym at about 7:30 a.m. and continued his phone call with his friend Kenneth Wagner in the driveway. He occasionally got out, strolled down the driveway, and peeked through the front door window to see if baby Western was awake. He said he finished his call, entered his home at 8:10 a.m. and found Amanda lying face down on the floor. He thought she was sick or unconscious. He called emergency services at 8:22 a.m. Took him 12 minutes to make that call. In an emergency situation, 12 minutes is quite a long time. He repeatedly said he thought something had gone wrong with the pregnancy and maybe she'd gotten dizzy and fallen. Did he not notice after 12 minutes that there was brain matter about 5 feet away from her body? Emergency room Dr. Scott Floyd testified that the blood on her head was coagulated, leading him to believe that the gunshot had occurred a couple of hours earlier, but those transcripts were not made public. Davy was asked if he had called anyone else after dialing 911. He said he called his father next. Defense attorneys did not cross-examine Davy Blackburn. Authorities corroborated his story with surveillance footage from the gym. Thus, he was not among the suspects. An autopsy conducted on November 12th showed Amanda suffered a gunshot wound to the back of her head. She also had a gunshot wound to her lower left arm that went through her biceps and another one that entered and exited her upper back. Multiple scratches were found on her left cheek along with a split lip and a knocked-out lower tooth. These injuries indicated a possible struggle between Amanda and her attacker. A thorough investigation was launched. CCTV footage from nearby streets was examined. Neighbors and family acquaintances were interviewed as well. One neighbor reported hearing gunshots about 35 minutes after Davy left the house. Another neighbor, Reginald Townsall, mentioned their street wasn't known for incidents like this, and expressed shock by stating that the Blackburns didn't deserve this tragedy. Everyone thought highly of the Blackburn family. They were seen as wonderful and loving people by their community. Based on Amanda's injuries and the missing bank cards as well as MacBook bag, robbery seemed to be an initial theory during this investigation. On the morning of November 10, 2015, several emergency calls were made reporting home invasions. Various residences near Blackburn's home. Around 5:20 a.m., one woman reported waking up to find her cell, laptop, purse and keys missing from her apartment. Her car was also gone from the parking. The sliding glass door to her apartment was. 3 hours later, another woman reported a burglary. Someone had broken through the patio screen and entered the house. According to police reports, for televisions, a MacBook Pro, a Tiffany pearl necklace, pink women's sweater, a remote control, a bag of oranges, and bedding were missing from the residence. Just 5 minutes after that second call, another individual from Sunnyfield Court contacted emergency services. This time it was Davy Blackburn. Lieutenant Richard of the Indianapolis Police Department stated that police were investigating potential connections between this homicide and the other burglaries in the same neighborhood that morning. Police have not disclosed details about the ongoing investigation to maintain its integrity. However, after obtaining images of possible suspects from one of the burglarized homes, they released these images to the public for assistance in identifying and helping with the investigation. Davy Blackburn expressed confidence that the police department was doing everything within their power to apprehend his wife's perpetrator. Investigators assured him that they had unprecedented support to continue their investigation and were optimistic that promising leads would soon help identify those responsible. Key clues instrumental in tracking down 3 suspects included a stolen pink sweater, cell phone records, and an ATM receipt. The receipt and sweater were discovered in a stolen Chrysler Sebring, used during the robberies. Authorities recovered this vehicle on November 11th, near Blackburn's home. The debit card listed on the receipt matched Amanda Blackburn's stolen card. Investigators obtained a warrant to examine ATM camera footage and discovered video showing the driver concealing his face with a stolen pink sweater. Police relied on DNA testing, surveillance footage, and witnesses' testimonies to identify those responsible for these crimes. The results from the DNA testing of the sweater confirmed that Jian Watson was one of the suspects. Watson's identification marked the first significant breakthrough in the case, as indicated in the affidavit. Cell phone records were obtained because Watson's number was already in the database due to his parole for a prior burglary. Subsequently, Diana Gordon's cell phone records were also retrieved. These records demonstrated that both Watson's and Gordon's cell phones were present in the vicinity when the crime occurred. The phone records further disclosed that Gordon and Watson were near the Chase Bank, where Amanda's debit card was used on the day of the murder. Larry Taylor emerged as a critical piece of information when police examined surveillance footage from the area. This footage enabled them to identify Taylor's phone number and trace his address. In the subsequent days, reports surfaced indicating that a firearm had been located near the Blackburn residence. According to police, an individual delivered this gun to the Broad Ripple Fire Department, claiming they had found it outside the couple's home. Crime lab technicians analyzed the weapon over 2 weeks of investigation and detective work. Police eventually charged 18-year-old Larry Taylor and 21-year-old Jian Watson with Amanda Blackburn's murder. Another individual, 24-year-old Diana Gordon, who was suspected of burglary, was arrested for a parole violation and not charged with a felony. He did not enter Blackburn's home during the incident. The crime lab confirmed that a gun found near Amanda Blackburn's home was indeed used in committing the crime. All 3 suspects were taken into custody. During questioning, Larry Taylor admitted to shooting Amanda twice, explaining he acted out of fear she might scratch him after she jumped on him. After she fell over, he leaned down and shot her in the back of her head, subsequently watching her bleed to death. The criminal trio intended to rob the Blackburn house for money. They chose their target upon noticing that Amanda's husband had left their front door unlocked when he went to the gym. Inside, they confronted Amanda to prevent her from interfering. During this confrontation, Taylor struck her with a gun. Watson and Gordon saw the woman and decided it was time to leave. They already had the stolen bank cards, so they went searching for an ATM. After failing to withdraw $500 from one, they successfully obtained $1,400 from another. This is when CCTV captured them. They then headed back to the Blackburn house to pick up Taylor. In their absence, a struggle took place inside. Amanda, regaining consciousness after being struck, lunged at the intruder. He tackled her in response. Following this, Taylor placed the stolen debit cards in the accomplice's car, who was at an ATM during the crime. Upon their return, he confessed to shooting Amanda, according to court records. The Blackburn home was their 3rd target on November 10th. Earlier, in their first break-in, they stole a laptop, wallet, and car while the residents slept. Inside that home, they noticed a recording camera, but moved on regardless. Next, they broke into another house through a patio window and stole 4 televisions, a laptop, jewelry, a bag of oranges, and a pink sweater that later helped police identify them. Court documents detailed this evidence collected against the suspects. The crucial piece was Watson's DNA found on the pink sweater used to cover his face from surveillance as he tried withdrawing cash with Amanda Blackburn's bank card. Watson and Gordon cooperated with authorities in return for reduced sentences. Larry Taylor waived his right to remain silent and admitted being near the burglary scene, but claimed confusion about his activities. Formal charges were brought by the county prosecutor. Larry Taylor faces 13 charges, including felony murder, after knowingly killing Amanda Blackburn. Jalen Watson is charged with felony, along with multiple counts of burglary and theft. Diana Gordon, already in custody for parole violation, also faces burglary charges. Additionally, there was a fourth person aware of these crimes, but not actively participating in them. He was questioned and released. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit worked with the gang unit and federal marshals to arrest Taylor. Police Chief Rick Height praised the cooperation that led to the arrest. The detectives worked tirelessly all day, without sleep, to solve the murders in the city. With assistance from Assistant U.S. Attorney Josh Minkler and Prosecutor Terry Curry, justice was served. Because the victim was pregnant, prosecutors said they might consider filing additional charges related to the fetus. Even though the woman's underwear had been removed and her shirt pulled up, they stated there was no evidence to support rape charges. Larry Taylor's first trial took place in December 2021, but it ended abruptly when it was discovered that a juror had shared information about the case with other jurors. This disclosure interrupted the trial, leading to a mistrial being declared. The final trial took place in October 2022. Jury selection was more thorough this time. Over 100 individuals were considered as potential jurors, each having to fill out a 16-page questionnaire for attorneys to evaluate if a fair verdict could be reached. Larry Joe Taylor received an 86-year sentence at the Indiana State Correctional Institution for Amanda Blackburn's murder and for additional charges related to a home burglary. Diane Ogden and Jalen Watson agreed to plea deals and testified against Larry Taylor during the trial. Both received sentences ranging from 20 to 35 years in prison. Jalen Watson and Larry Taylor are currently incarcerated in the Marion County Jail. A murder conviction in Indiana can result in a prison sentence of 45 to 60 years, with some cases punishable by life imprisonment or even the death penalty. Prosecutors filed a motion to enhance Larry Taylor's sentence, potentially adding up to an additional 20 years since Amanda Blackburn was pregnant at the time of her death. Davy Blackburn, Amanda's husband and a church pastor, expressed relief that those responsible for his wife's death have been apprehended and will no longer pose a threat to anyone else. Amanda Blackburn's death has touched the hearts of many people, including the chief executive. Her funeral at a Christian church was attended by more than 2,000 individuals. Among those in attendance was Governor Mike Pence. The resident church has set up a donation page to assist with Amanda Blackburn's funeral and medical expenses. Davy Blackburn expressed hope for a judicial system that will wisely handle those responsible for his family's immense pain. Remarkably, he has consistently reported that he has chosen to forgive Amanda's killers. "I was very relieved to learn of the arrest," he told reporters. "Although everything inside me wants to hate, be angry, and despair, I choose the path of forgiveness, grace, and hope." Shafilia Ahmed was born on July 14, 1986, a British Pakistani girl. Shafilia's father, Iftikhar Ahmed, originally hailed from the Gujarat district of Pakistan. At the age of about 20 to 22, Iftikhar moved to Britain for employment. While staying there for a while and during work, Iftikhar falls in love with a foreign girl and marries her. Soon he becomes a father. When he returns to Pakistan and informs his family about his marriage, they do not accept it. Then Iftikhar's family puts heavy pressure on him to marry another Pakistani girl. Despite Iftikhar's resistance, he eventually succumbs to his family's insistence and he marries a Pakistani girl named Farzana. After the marriage, Iftikhar returns to Britain and after revealing the truth to his first wife, divorces her. Then, after some time, Iftikhar calls his second wife Farzana to Britain from Pakistan. After coming to Britain, Iftikhar starts living with his wife in the city of Bradford in West Yorkshire. It is here that on July 14, 1986, Shafilia Ahmed is born. Shortly after Shafilia's birth, the family moves to the town of Warrington in Britain. It is here that Shafilia completes her early education. During this time, 2 more daughters are born in the family and Iftikhar's family grows larger. Although this family resides in Britain on holidays, Iftikhar used to take his wife and all his children to Pakistan for vacation. Now the year had come, 2003, and by now Shafilia Ahmed had also turned 17 and was studying the law. Her dream was to become a lawyer. When Shafilia and the other children have a break on February 18, 2003, Shafilia comes to Pakistan with her family for vacation. During their trip to Pakistan, this family also participates in a family wedding ceremony. However, just a few days after this wedding, a major incident occurs with Shafilia. She accidentally drinks phenylflora cleaner. Actually, phenyl is commonly used in Asia for cleaning floors and homes. Now, because phenyl is made by mixing some chemicals and soap, drinking it causes severe pain in Shafilia's throat. The reason behind Shafilia drinking phenyl is initially said to be because her parents pressured her into arranged marriage with a Pakistani boy. Because of this pressure, Shafilia drank the phenyl intending to end her life. But later, her parents claimed that someone had poured phenyl into an old bottle of water, kept in the same bottle usually used for drinking water, and in the darkness of the night, Shafilia mistook phenyl for water and drank it. Due to this mistake, Shafilia had to endure a lot of pain. As a result, she's admitted to a hospital in Pakistan. Now, because Shafilia's injury was quite severe, she has to stay in the hospital for a long time. During this time, the holidays of other family members also end, so Iftikhar takes his 2 children and wife back to Britain, while Shafilia has to stay in Pakistan for treatment. However, shortly after, Iftikhar arranges for Shafilia's return as well, and on May 27, 2003, Shafilia returns to Britain. Straight from the airport, Shafilia is admitted to a hospital for treatment through an ambulance. After several months of treatment, Shafilia's throat heals considerably, and now she rejoins college. Alongside college, she also starts a part-time job. But on September 18, 2003, college teacher notices that Shafilia Ahmed hasn't been coming to college for the past week. Attempts are made to contact Shafilia via phone, but she cannot be reached. When teacher asked about this to Shafilia's parents, they revealed that Shafilia has not been home for the past week. Their daughter has been missing for a week, and her parents hadn't filed any complaints about her yet, which strikes Shafilia's teacher as very strange. Immediately after this, they inform the police. Upon filing the case, a police team arrives at Shafilia's house for investigation and questioning begins with her parents. Shafilia's parents say that they last saw Shafilia at their home on September 11, 2003, and since then, she hasn't been seen. Upon this, the police ask, when your daughter has been missing for a week, why haven't you filed a complaint with the police yet? To this, Shafilia's parents respond, this is not the first time Shafilia has been missing from home for a few days. It has happened several times before. To confirm this, when the police checked the records, it is revealed that Shafilia has been missing from home several times in the past. The first time was when Shafilia was only 12 years old. She went missing with her younger sister on March 10, 1998. Because of this, her parents had also filed a missing report for both their daughters with the police. However, at that time, Shafilia returned home with her sister as evening approached. According to records, Shafilia ran away from home for the second time on November 25, 2002. Once again, her father, Iftikhar Ahmad, filed a missing report for his daughter. After extensive searching, Shafilia was found by the police sitting in a park. According to police records, for the third time, Shafilia left home with a friend on February 3, 2003. This time, Shafilia did not return home for 2 days, and then on February 5, 2003, she went to a safe house for orphan people and filed a report against her parents for domestic violence and mental abuse. After the report was filed, the police officer spoke with Shafilia Ahmed and her parents, and after everything was cleared up, Shafilia returned home. After this, on February 18, 2003, Shafilia, along with her 2 sisters and parents, goes to Pakistan for a family function and disappears from there shortly after returning to Britain. Now, looking at old records, the police also suspect that Shafilia Ahmed may have gone somewhere again this time and will return home in a few days. Therefore, the police try to find Shafilia in all those places where she could have gone. However, even after a few days, the police cannot find any trace of Shafilia from anywhere. Considering Shafilia's history of running away from home before, the police show a little laziness in the investigation this time. After this, some local media start making an issue out of the police's laziness. As a result, demand for a thorough search for Shafilia increases at the local level. Due to the progress in the Shafilia missing case, the police accelerate their investigation. Subsequently, they discover numerous poems written by Shafilia at her home. These poems reveal her dissatisfaction with her household environment. Her parents wished for Shafir to lead a traditional Pakistani girl's life, but she favored Western culture. Through her poetry, she expressed this pain. As Shafilia's poems reach the public, the case gains momentum, putting pressure on the police to find her. Consequently, law enforcement intervenes, intensifying their search efforts in places Shafilia could have visited. Eventually, CCTV footage confirmed Shafilia's identity to her parents, confirming that the girl in the footage is indeed Shafilia Asmarand. A few days after Shafilia went missing, her parents identified her. This made the police believe that at least Shafilia was alive. However, a new turn in the case occurs when the CCTV footage shows Shafilia's class teacher. Actually, when the picture is shown to Shafilia's class teacher, they say that the girl in the photo is not Shafilia Ahmed. Some other people also confirm by watching the CCTV footage that the girl in the footage is not Shafilia. Now the police find it very strange that Shafilia's parents themselves did not recognize their daughter from the CCTV footage. The police had many questions in their minds, and to find the answers to those questions, they secretly installed some audio recording devices at Shafilia's home. The police were listening to everything that was happening in Shafilia's house through an audio recording device. According to the recording, one day Iftikhar is heard saying, "In Britain, if you kill 40 people and there is no evidence against you, then the law here can't do anything to you." Additionally, one day Iftikhar Ahmad is heard saying, "If the police collect DNA samples from inside the car, what could happen?" Furthermore, the audio recording device captures some suspicious conversations that lead the police to suspect that perhaps Shafilia's father had something to do with his daughter. Now, because the police start to doubt Iftikhar Ahmed, they use his audio recordings as evidence, and on December 18, 2003, the police arrest Iftikhar and his wife Farzana Ahmed, along with 5 other family members on charges of murdering Shafilia and hiding her body. The police had arrested these people solely on suspicion. The police hoped that during the investigation, some concrete evidence would be found against these peoples. However, no evidence was found against any of the arrested persons, and eventually the police released them all. It had been a year since 2004, and there was still no evidence in the case of Shafilia Ahmed. The police were engaged in efforts to locate Shafilia. Meanwhile, floods occurred in the famous Kent River, flowing from the Sedgwick area of Britain. When the floods were under control, the body of a girl were found in extremely poor condition on the banks of this river. The distance between the place where the body was found and where Shafilia Ahmed had disappeared was 70 miles. But still, the police have doubts whether this corpse could be Shafilia's. However, to confirm this, DNA samples are collected from the dead body and then matched with the DNA of Iftikhar and Fazan. In this case, a major twist occurs when a body washed away in the flood matches with the DNA samples of Iftikhar. This meant that the body washed away from the river was not someone else's but Shafilia Ahmed's, meaning in the search for Shafilia Ahmed, whom the police had been looking for the past year, now reaches the police itself in the form of a corpse. Now, the biggest question in front of the police was who and why murdered Shafilia Ahmed. However, even before the statements and actions of corpse's parents, there were doubts, and in 2003, these two, along with 5 others, were arrested. Therefore, once again, Shafilia's parents are arrested and questioned. The trial of this case is also going on, but even this time, no allegations can be proven against them, which leads the police to release them again. However, after that, the police detain some other suspects and proceed with the investigation against all of them. But despite many efforts, the police cannot reach the murderer. As time passes, people slowly start to forget about Shafilia Ahmed's case. Shafilia disappeared in 2003, and now it was 2010. That is, it had been 7 years since Shafilia's death. By now, Shafilia's family had also moved on from the incident and had become busy with their daily lives. But then on August 25, 2010, a major theft occurs at Iftikhar Ahmed's house. By now, Iftikhar Ahmed's family had already become the center of attention in the city due to their daughter's disappearance. Due to this, when theft occurs in this house, it starts making headlines on the front page of newspapers. But once again, this puts heavy pressure on the police. Despite working honestly, the police quickly get involved in the search for the thief. After many days of hard work, the police make a revelation that surprises everyone. Actually, the police arrest not someone else, but Iftikhar Ahmed's daughter, Alicia Ahmed, on charges of theft in the house. In fact, Alicia was Shafilia's younger sister. According to Alicia, she didn't get as much money from home as she demanded and needed. Because of this, she orchestrated the theft of her father's money at her own home. However, police had solved the theft case very quickly, but the police spot an opportunity here and now. They start talking to Alicia about her sister Shafilia, who disappeared many years ago, and reopened the file related to the Shafilia case. In the initial conversation, the police suspect that Alicia knows something about the disappearance of Shafilia that the world is still unaware of. The police officers try to uncover what happened with Shafilia, but Alicia refuses to cooperate with them. However, the police then tell Alicia, "You have orchestrated a theft in your own house, which could lead to a long prison sentence for you. But if you can provide any information about Shafilia that nobody else knows, your sentence could be significantly reduced." Afterwards, when Alicia reveals some details to the police, everyone is left stunned. Alicia explains, "It was not someone else but my father, Iftikhar, and my mother Farzana Ahmed, who had beaten Shafilia Ahmad in front of all of us sisters. Then our father put polyfine on her face, and due to suffocation, she was dead. Then he placed Shafilia's body in his car and threw it into the distant jungle. However, due to the flood, the body drifted to the river bank from the jungle." According to Alicia, Iftikhar and Farzara did not like their daughter's modern lifestyle at all. On the surface, Shafilia started falling in love with a boy. And when this matter comes to light, Iftikhar and Farzana quickly try to arrange Shafilia's marriage with their preferred boy. When the family goes to Pakistan for a family function, there is an attempt to forcefully marry Shafilia to a boy there. But Shafilia refuses to marry for this reason, and she consumes fennel. After that, her health deteriorates and her marriage does not happen either. When Shafilia returns to Britain, her family members here also insist on arranging her marriage with a boy of their choice. But when Shafilia repeatedly refuses this marriage, her father gets angry and at first beats Shafilia in anger and then covers her face with a polythene bag. And then due to suffocation, Shafilia Ahmad dies here. But immediately after this disclosure, Alicia Ahmed becomes a government witness in the case. In exchange, she is assured a minimum sentence in the theft case. However, based on Alicia's statement on September 2, 2010, Farzala and Iftikhar are arrested, and then a case of their own daughter's murder is pursued against them. Both of them remain in jail for several months after the arrest. However, nearly a year later, on September 15, 2011, they are granted bail by the Manchester Crown Court. In the further investigation, the police gather some crucial evidence, and based on that evidence, the trial of this case begins in the Chester Crown Court on May 21, 2012. Initially, Farzana and Iftikhar continue to deny their involvement in their daughter's murder, but when Farzana begins to suspect that she is being framed for her own daughter's murder, she finally accepts in court on July 9, 2012, that Shafilia Ahmed's murder was not committed by anyone else but by Iftikhar Ahmed himself. In her statement, Farzana also reveals that she tried to stop Iftikhar, but instead, Iftikhar beat and threatened her family, saying, "If any of you ever talk about this to anyone, your fate will be just like Shafilia's." Now, 2 witnesses had testified against Iftikhar Ahmed. Besides, the police who gather evidence also indicate that it was Iftikhar Ahmed who murdered Shafilia, then threw her body far into the jungle. However, a natural disaster struck that area, and with the floodwaters, Shafilia's body drifted and reached the riverbank on its own. After a lengthy trial in August 2012, Farzana and Iftikhar are found guilty of murdering their own daughter and disposing of her body after the murder. They are then sentenced to 25 years each. It is also proven in court that this was an honor killing. Following this verdict, every year on July 14th, Shafilia Ahmed's birthday, the National Day of Memory for Victims of Honor Killings, is observed in her memory. So with this, the case of Shafilia Ahmed comes to a close. However, perhaps nature also desired that Shafilia Ahmed receive justice and her killers be punished. Therefore, albeit late, Shafilia's parents, her murderers, are also sentenced. The case of Shelby von Halt. Shelby von Halt was born on September 7, 2000 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, USA, as a cheerful young girl. She was the second of 5 children in her family, which consisted of her mother, Char Hartman, father, Von Halt, older sister, Peyton Hartman, and younger siblings, Devin von Halt and Isaac von Halt. Shelby graduated from Troy Center High School in 2018 and spent the next 2 years working at a steakhouse and other places. During this time, she was contemplating her desired career path and seemed to be leaning towards a therapeutic field, although she had not yet decided on the exact specialty. As a 20-year-old, Shelby was living life to the fullest, known for her cheerful personality that made her the life of every party. She loved to smile, dance, sing, and spend time with friends. Notably, she was living independently, although the reasons for this were unclear. While she was not active on most social media platforms, she frequently posted cheerful photos on Facebook, many of which featured moments shared with her young niece, Camilla, who is the daughter of her older sister, Peyton. According to her mother, Shelby met Valerie Rose Hardick, a 22-year-old woman, on Facebook. Although they reportedly did not have a close relationship, Valerie's life is shrouded in mystery, with rumors of a troubled childhood, questionable associations, and potential mental health challenges. On June 20th, 2021, at 6:48 p.m., a 911 dispatcher received a distress call from a woman who managed to convey that she was injured and claimed Valerie shot her. Although it's unclear whether the woman provided her address or if the police traced the call, officers from the Fort Wayne Police Department arrived at Shelby's residence shortly after. Upon arrival, the officers forced entry into the residence and found Shelby barely conscious, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds and surrounded by a large pool of blood. One officer stayed with Shelby while the others conducted a protective sweep of the residence to ensure no other victims were present and that the perpetrator was not still inside. They did this while waiting for an ambulance and local firefighters to arrive. During this time, the officers attempted to provide first aid, and a surgeon asked Shelby if she knew who had shot her. Shelby identified Valerie as the attacker. Emergency medical personnel soon took over Shelby's care, rushing her to the nearby hospital, where she was in critical condition but still alive. Meanwhile, Shelby's family was informed of the incident, and Fort Wayne Police Department officers began gathering evidence from her home. A doorbell camera was a significant piece of evidence, and after reviewing its footage, a person of interest was identified, though details were not publicly disclosed at the time. In a remarkable coincidence, a disturbing incident took place the day after Shelby's critical injury, approximately 50 kilometers away in Ohio. At around 10:30 a.m., the local police department received multiple calls about a suspicious-looking young woman lurking around a convenience store at a gas station. According to eyewitnesses, she had been wandering around the store and near the gas pumps for about an hour, seemingly trying to catch a glimpse of customers' credit card numbers as they made their purchases. Furthermore, the police had already received a prior call from a man who reported seeing the same woman earlier at the convenience store, claiming that she had pointed a gun at his back. After taking precautions, police officers arrived at the gas station where they found the woman and arrested her without any violence. The 22-year-old woman was identified as Valerie Rose Hardick. She had a 9mm handgun on her, which was the same type of weapon used in the attack on Shelby. Shelby had already identified her attacker as Valerie, which made the police even more certain they had the right person. The car Valerie was driving was the same one captured on Shelby's doorbell camera, leaving the scene just before Shelby called for help. Although the investigation is ongoing, Valerie was taken into custody and transferred to the county jail, where she will await her court hearing. In the local municipal court, Shelby was clinging to life after being gravely injured by 89mm bullet wounds to her chest and abdomen. Doctors placed her in an induced coma and did everything they could to save her. Unfortunately, 3 days after the brutal attack on June 22, 2021, Shelby's body gave in to the injuries, and she was pronounced dead. According to her mother and media reports, Shelby died after undergoing complex abdominal surgeries that did not yield the desired results. She received 20 blood transfusions, but the medical outlook was always bleak. If Shelby had survived, doctors believed her legs would have needed to be amputated. The brutal murder raises questions about what could drive someone to commit such a heinous crime. According to the limited information available, investigators attributed the motive to jealousy. It is alleged that Shelby was dating a man who Valerie was strongly attached to, although his identity was not revealed. Valerie was charged with criminal assault and aggravated threats. Initially held in Ohio on a $100,000 bail for threatening a man with a firearm at a gas station, Valerie was later transferred to Allen County to face charges for Shelby's murder. Shelby von Halt's remains were memorialized in a private ceremony at a funeral home on June 29, 2021, and then cremated. In early 2022, Valerie Rose Hardick entered a plea deal in connection with Shelby's murder. Hardick pleaded guilty, citing mental illness as a defense. As part of the deal, the prosecution dropped a charge related to the use of a firearm during the crime, which could have added 20 years to her sentence. In September 2022, Hardick's sentencing hearing took place in the Superior Court of Allen County. As agreed, she pleaded guilty but mentally ill. During the hearing, her defense attorney presented mitigating circumstances, including her difficult upbringing, marked by her stepmother's death, abuse by her stepbrother, and a history of mental health issues. However, the prosecutors emphasized the jealousy motive behind Shelby's murder and highlighted Hardick's criminal history, which had escalated over time. They also noted that Hardick was on probation at the time of the murder, having been part of an alternative program due to previous charges. Throughout the hearing, Valerie's behavior was inconsistent. At times, she seemed coherent and fully aware of the situation, but at other moments she appeared nervous, distracted, and even smiled at Shelby's family. Despite this, she answered the court's questions accurately. Although the exact content of her statements was not specified in media reports, it was noted that she never expressed remorse or apologized to Shelby's family. Shelby's parents, on the other hand, poignantly conveyed their profound loss during their victim impact statements. Shelby's father reminisced about his daughter's love for symbolic icons like peace signs, and how she was still finding her way in life at the time of her murder. He reflected on Valerie's demeanor during her guilty plea, stating that her voice conveyed a lack of remorse. The grieving father asserted that by admitting to intentionally killing Shelby, Valerie seemed to take pride in her crime, which demonstrated a clear lack of regret. Toby expressed his belief that there was more to the story behind Valerie's motivation for killing Shelby than just jealousy, and he referenced the defense's argument about Valerie's mental health issues. Shelby's father pointed out that many people in prison have mental health issues, and he vowed to continue seeking answers about the tragedy. In a heartfelt reflection, Toby noted that there were two tragedies in this case. The first was the shocking and agonizing death of his daughter, and the second was Valerie's decision to throw away her future in a fit of rage. He acknowledged that Valerie's children would greatly suffer as a result. It was revealed that Valerie, who was 22 years old, had at least 2 children, although no further details about them were publicly disclosed. The grieving father said that the tragedy wouldn't stop at the graveyard or in the courtroom because true justice couldn't be achieved in such a tragic situation. However, he said he had forgiven Valerie in order to find peace within himself, which he believed was guided by his faith in Christ. He was confident that Shelby was with God and reiterated his deep love for her. Shelby's mother, Sharna, also spoke about her feelings. She remembered her daughter as a princess from the day she was born, describing her as a kind spirit who would always help a friend, no matter the distance. Sharna vowed to attend all possible appeal hearings that Valerie's defense might initiate in the future. She shared the pain of remembering her lifeless daughter and the helplessness she felt, unable to protect her. All she could do was lay her head on Shelby's chest as her daughter lay in a medically induced coma. She publicly praised her daughter's courage, saying that Shelby had managed to name her attacker twice and fought hard for her life after being attacked. Sharna detailed the severe injuries Shelby suffered, explaining that her heart was racing at an unsustainable pace. Although Shelby's medical expenses totaled nearly $500,000, Sharna didn't seek compensation because they were waived following her death. The funeral expenses alone were around $115,000, but Sharna emphasized that she didn't expect to receive any compensation and didn't want any money from Valerie. Holding back tears, Shelby's mother poignantly expressed that memories were all she had left, and she wished she could trade places with her daughter. She noted that some days, the grief was so intense that she couldn't muster the strength to get up. After the legal representatives finished their presentations and the victims' family statements, the court awaited the judge's verdict. Under Indiana law, the sentence could range from a minimum of 45 years to a maximum of 65 years, with an average of 55 years. Valerie's defense team requested the minimum sentence, citing various mitigating factors, while the prosecution sought the maximum sentence. Before making his decision, the judge pointed out that it was clear the murder was planned in advance, and Valerie was fully aware of her actions. Her decision to flee to Ohio further supported this. While the judge acknowledged that Valerie had a difficult upbringing, marked by inadequate education, personal traumas, and mental health issues, he emphasized that she already had a growing criminal record at the time of Shelby's murder, including pending charges for a separate crime. Despite her past attempts at rehabilitation, her criminal history and lack of success in those attempts meant her traumatic past could not be used as an excuse. Taking these factors into account, the judge sentenced the 23-year-old Valerie to the maximum possible sentence of 65 years in prison. He also ordered the destruction of the weapon used in the murder. According to the American Correctional System's records, Valerie is currently incarcerated in an Indiana women's prison, with the earliest estimated release date being June 18, 2027, at which time she will be 72 years old. After the court session, Shelby's parents said they were satisfied with the verdict. However, they later made it clear that no verdict could ease their pain, especially since Valerie would be spending her days in prison. Shelby's mother emphasized that she would always miss and remember her daughter. This case is particularly notable because the victim, who was mortally wounded, was able to identify her killer. A prosecutor not involved in the case explained that when a dying victim identifies their attacker, this is known as a dying declaration. These statements provide a crucial lead for detectives and are the only exception to the hearsay rule in court trials, ensuring that the most reliable evidence is presented. The prosecutor also stressed that dying declarations are admissible in court because they tend to produce more trustworthy statements, given the immense pressure and tragic circumstances surrounding them. 28-year-old Mika Wadley lived in Richmond, California in 1999. One evening in January, a neighbor of Mika heard screaming coming from her home in the 1300 block of Carlson Boulevard. The neighbor went to her residence and knocked on the front door. The screaming continued for approximately 30 seconds. The neighbor then retreated to his apartment and called 911. Officers found the front door locked, but the back door was unlocked and partially opened. Once inside the home, investigators found Mika's body on the floor of her bedroom. Her hands were bound together with shoelaces. She had been smothered. A buck knife was located under her body. Investigators were able to find DNA and fingerprints belonging to the suspect at the crime scene. Their initial investigation focused on a man she spent the prior evening with. That person was ultimately ruled out as a suspect. There were no other investigative leads and the case went cold. In 2002, a mixed DNA profile was developed from swabs collected from Mika's hands and a bloodstain at the crime scene. This DNA profile was submitted to the California Department of Justice to search the offender database. Unfortunately, there were no matches. Then, in 2020, additional DNA testing was requested. This time they focused on the previously untested fingernail clippings and ligatures. A male DNA profile could be developed from Mika's fingernail clippings. In October of 2020, the DNA profile created by the Contra Costa County Crime Lab was submitted to the California Department of Justice DNA Data Bank program to conduct a familial search of the state DNA index system. Then, in April of 2021, California Department of Justice and Bureau of Forensic Services and Bureau of Investigation agents presented the results of the requested familial search. The Department of Justice's investigation revealed a person who was a potential first-degree relative of the male suspect, but the relative was ruled out as a suspect. Then finally, with the assistance of the Contra Costa County District's Attorney's Office, detectives were able to track down an immediate relative in September of 2021. A buccal swab was obtained from the person and submitted to the crime lab. On September 17, 2021, Richmond police received notification that the buccal swab from the relative confirmed that Jerry Lee Henderson is the man whose DNA matched the fingernail clippings from Mika. Investigators discovered that Henderson passed away due to an overdose just 11 days after he took Mika's life. Nevertheless, Richmond police hoped the revelation would provide some measure of closure for her relatives. California Attorney General Rob Bonta had this to say, "Law enforcement working this case never gave up. It is my sincere hope that this resolution brings the family of Mika Wadley a measure of peace. Nothing can ever bring back a loved one, but we're committed to doing all we can to help bring the truth to light in the fight for justice." Acting Richmond Police Chief Louis Torona added, "It is my hope that this news brings needed closure to all those who knew and loved Mika Wadley." Some of Mika's family members also spoke at the press conference. "Answers might not come today, but it will come tomorrow. It's going to come," said Mika's sister Quila Wadley, "my favorite auntie. She was beautiful, outgoing, and smart, loved to hang out and have fun," said her niece Davina Peterson. Mika's family says Henderson was a friend of a friend, but that there were no other relationship besides that. 15-year-old Kenya McClintock and 16-year-old Kevin Drinks met in 1978 in Philadelphia. They were high school sweethearts. He took her to the senior prom at Germantown High, but they broke up shortly after graduation. 2 decades later, in the year 2000, Kenya and Kevin reconnected. Kenya's mom passed away and Kevin stopped by to pay his respects. They got married in 2001 in front of more than 100 people at the Unitarian Society of Germantown Church. Kevin serenaded Kenya while she walked down the aisle. He was a talented singer from a long line of vocalists in his family. In 2011, they bought their dream home in Ronhurst, Pennsylvania. Kevin found work at a furniture store in North Philadelphia as a delivery driver. Just a few months after buying the house, Kenya received a call from Kevin's youngest brother. He was frantically screaming and telling Kenya to get to the hospital. Kenya thought that Kevin might have been in a car accident and raced to Hanuman Hospital. There, she learned that Kevin had been fatally shot behind the furniture store where he had just started working. It made no sense to Kenya. Kevin was a church-going grandfather who sang gospel music and loved spending time with his family. Who would want to take his life and why? Despite investigators' best efforts, they could not provide any answers to Kenya's questions. She passed out flyers and buttons and t-shirts calling for justice for Kevin Drinks in the area where the shooting occurred. She called her elected officials imploring them for help. Kenya also had to deal with rumors that Kevin was maybe involved with bad people. She also got frustrated seeing more and more cold cases solved while Kevin's remained open. Their dream home turned into a space of painful memories and also fear. As she did not know who targeted her husband, she wondered if she was safe. Kenya then moved. She prayed and pressed officials for answers and then prayed some more. Then finally, in 2018, she got news that she had been waiting for so long. Philadelphia Police Detective John Verracchio called her. He had been listening to recordings of jailhouse telephone conversations and heard something relevant to Kevin's case. Chad Runnels was accused of taking the life of a 22-year-old man 2 months before Kevin was shot. Chad was worried that a key witness was going to testify against him. He then plotted with 3 other men, Michael Blackston, Simage Armstead, and Rayshawn Combs. They wanted to silence the witness. Instead, they somehow shot Kevin Drinks, the wrong man. Kenya had wanted answers for so long, but when they finally came, they were gutting. In March of 2022, Runnels, Blackstone, and Armstead were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Combs' sentencing is scheduled for June of 2022. District Attorney Larry Krasner said he hopes this case shows Philadelphia that there are a lot of people in law enforcement who consider no case to be permanently cold and who are always trying. Kenya expressed her frustration about the case that went unsolved for so long, but she also praised what she called her dream team. It consists of Assistant District Attorneys Ashley Toxilowski and Christian Gwynn, along with Witness Victim Coordinator Kathy Lees. Kenya was quoted as saying, "People can say, oh, that's not really justice because he's not here. He's still gone. But my husband can rest in peace. That's how I look at it." The case of Luke Jobson. Luke Jobson, a 22-year-old who was on the verge of qualifying as an electrical and mechanical engineer after completing 4 years of study and an apprenticeship. He was a well-liked and talented individual who was known for his athletic abilities, particularly in football. Growing up, Luke attended St. Patrick's Comprehensive and Hawood Primary Schools in Thornaby. He was a talented sportsman, playing football as a center forward for Thornaby Central in his youth. His love of clothes and fashion was evident, and he took great pride in his appearance. According to his dad, Stuart, Luke was a perfectionist who would often check his family members' clothes to ensure they looked their best. Stuart described Luke as a genuine and beautiful person, both inside and out. Luke, a young man from Yarm, attended a nightclub called The Keys on Saturday, January 26, 2019, along with his friends. Yarm is a small town and The Keys is a popular spot on the high street where the town's nightlife is concentrated. Luke failed to return home after his night out at The Keys and his parents tried to contact him on Sunday morning, but he didn't respond. His friends were also unaware of his whereabouts. Luke's family quickly took to Facebook to appeal for help, and many people joined the search for him. The police investigation began on Sunday, and Cleveland police released a statement expressing concern for Luke's disappearance, as it was out of character for him. They asked the public to share any private CCTV or dashcam footage that might be relevant to the case. Police had learned about a possible altercation involving Luke shortly before his disappearance. According to reports on social media, Luke got into a fight with several people outside the Keys around 2 a.m. The last reported sighting of Luke was near Yarm School at around 2:15 a.m. The police were investigating this information, but their top priority was finding the missing young man. Luke's girlfriend, Danny, made a heartfelt plea on social media describing her experience as a living nightmare and urging anyone with information to come forward. Luke's cousin, Jake, also reached out on Facebook, asking for help in locating Luke. He was last seen fleeing from a group of young men on Yarm High Street. Friends and family initiated a search for Luke near the River Tees in Yarm on Sunday, which eventually grew into a large-scale operation. By Monday morning, hundreds of concerned individuals gathered at Yarm School's car park, eager to contribute to the search. Despite many not knowing Luke personally, the overwhelming response to the Facebook appeal showcased the community's spirit. Cars arrived at the car park, carrying people who were ready to aid in the search. Many others arrived on foot, dressed in warm clothing, prepared to brave the cold weather. Over 300 people participated in the search, which was divided into 18 groups that scoured various areas, including Preston Park, Stokesley, Cottonwood, Early Nook, and Hilton. Specialist police search teams also combed the River Tees banks near Yarm School. A body found in a River Tees has been identified as 22-year-old Luke Jobson, who had been missing. Cleveland police confirmed the news and expressed their condolences to Luke's family and friends. Family members are being supported by specially trained officers during this difficult time. In a tribute, Luke's parents, Lisa Jobson and Stuart Banks, described their son as a popular and ambitious young man who loved working out at the gym. Luke's mother, Lisa, said they are proud of everything he achieved and want to celebrate his life. She added that they want everyone to remember him for the good things he did. The news of Luke's death sparked an outburst of emotion in the Teesside community. Friends and family members flooded social media with tributes, and a huge crowd gathered in Yarm for a vigil in his memory. Almost 1,000 people attended the event, which included a firework display, and a rendition of Angels by Robbie Williams. The community showed their support for Luke's family by leaving ribbons, balloons, and flowers near the scene of his death. As the police investigated Luke's death, they spoke to numerous individuals, including those who were at the nightclub on the night of the incident. They also obtained CCTV footage, which corroborated earlier reports of a confrontation between Luke and several others. The footage shows Luke wearing a gray t-shirt, jeans, and white sneakers. It appears that Luke made a comment to someone, which caused several aggressive-looking individuals to approach him. The situation quickly escalated, and Luke can be seen running away from the group as they chase after him. News of a confrontation being linked to Luke's death emerged soon after he disappeared as speculation about what had happened spread on social media. Initially, the police only confirmed reports of an altercation prior to his disappearance. They arrested 6 teenagers aged from 16 to 18 on suspicion of involvement in Luke's death, but later released all of them. The investigation continued, and a new development in the case occurred the following January. Cleveland police announced that 5 people aged 17 to 20 had been charged with a fray, which involves using more threatening unlawful violence, but not with Luke's death. They were set to appear in court. The 5 individuals charged include a 17-year-old, now 18, who cannot be named due to age restrictions, Edwin Taha, 20, Ryan Alp, 19, Ali Abdul Majid, 19, and Hamad Asif, 18. According to reports, Edwin Taha was the alleged leader of the group. In England and Wales, a person can be charged with a fray if they use or threaten violence towards another person in a way that would cause a reasonable person to fear for their safety. To understand the events leading up to Luke Jobson's death, we need to consider the following points. Firstly, when 2 or more people use or threaten violence, their actions are considered collectively. Secondly, for a threat to be valid in this context, it cannot be purely verbal. Looking at the recording, it's clear that Luke was concerned for his safety as he was seen running away. The threats against him were not just verbal. Unfortunately, the exact cause of the conflict remains unclear as none of the suspects provided a clear answer. Additionally, the whereabouts of Luke's friends, who were with him at the nightclub, are unknown at the time of the quarrel. The police recording does not provide this information. From the footage, it appears that Luke was not planning to leave the club as he was standing outside in just a t-shirt with his jacket still inside. The footage shows Luke confronting a group before being forced to run for his safety. Initially, his athletic ability allowed him to overcome his suitors. However, the group, including Taha and other future defendants, returned to the nightclub, got into a car, and caught up with Luke near a school. They sprayed Luke's face with an unknown substance, suspected to be pepper spray, causing him to lose his sight. In an attempt to escape, Luke climbed over a wall into the school grounds, where CCTV cameras captured his entry into a boathouse. Sadly, this was the last time Luke was seen alive. After Taha pepper sprayed Luke's face, the group got back into their car and drove away. It's unclear whether Luke knew where he was going, but given that he didn't attend school there and was disoriented from the tear gas, it's unlikely he understood his surroundings. If this was the case, it's possible he accidentally fell into the water once he entered the boathouse. It's worth noting that these events took place in January, when the water in the river was extremely cold. According to the police, no one else entered the boathouse that night, and Luke never came out. 2 days later, the police found his body in the water near the school, and the cause of death was determined to be drowning. The suspects initially refused to admit guilt, but during the first court hearing on September 28, 2020, Edwin Taha and Ali Abdul changed their minds and admitted to their involvement in the fight. Autopsy results from pathologists Dr. Nigel Cooper and Dr. Jennifer Bolton revealed that Luke had consumed alcohol before his death. The amount he drank was likely to cause noticeable signs of intoxication in an average person. The police had released Edwin Taha on bail, and none of the suspects were detained before the trial. The investigation found that the victim had traces of a banned substance in his system, which, combined with alcohol, made him more vulnerable to hypothermia. There were no injuries or evidence of assault, and the deceased did not have any underlying medical conditions that contributed to his death. While the autopsy did not show any signs of eye inflammation or evidence of being sprayed with a substance, Witness statements confirmed that the deceased, Luke, was pepper-sprayed and struggled to walk and see. The perpetrator, Taha, later bragged about the incident on the high street. The coroner concluded that Luke was incapacitated by the pepper spray. The verdict was announced in October 2020. In an emotional statement, Luke's mother, Lisa Jobson, addressed the court as the individuals responsible for her son's death faced justice. Miss Jobson described the gang that had surrounded her son, Luke, before chasing him through Yarm High Street as a pack of wolves. She explained that from the day Luke was born, he had been loved, cared for, and protected. He had been their world and their only son. They had been extremely close to him, and he had been a kind, gentle, and genuine person who had touched the hearts of everyone he had met. Luke had been a loving and caring individual who had lit up a room with his presence. He had had good friends from diverse backgrounds and cultures, and he hadn't had a mean bone in his body. He had been a positive person who always strived to be his best and had always been looking forward to new experiences. Mississippi Jobson expressed that they would never forget the terror Luke had faced that night, and the fact that none of the gang members had had the courage to take responsibility for their actions was unbearable. Knowing that their faces had been the last ones Luke had seen on this earth was a constant reminder of the pain and suffering he had endured. It was a living hell for them, and they were left to live with the knowledge that their son hadn't been able to escape safely. At the trial, the lawyer for Abdul's co-defendant stated that Abdul was unaware that Taha possessed pepper spray. He claimed that Abdul did not expect the victim to be assaulted with a weapon. Only one person, not Abdul, knew that Taha had a pepper spray. Taha's lawyer revealed that his client had a difficult childhood which had led to poor decision-making. On the night of the incident, something was said that triggered a chain of events. Taha acknowledges that the outcome should never have happened. Taha's lawyer also shared that his client had moved to the UK from France at age 4 and had been left to live with a foster family after his mother returned to France. The judge emphasized that neither defendant was directly responsible for the victim's death, but noted that the chase had led to the victim entering the school and boathouse, ultimately resulting in drowning. Taha, 20, was sentenced to 21 months in prison after pleading guilty to a fracas. He also received an additional 4 years and 4 months for charges related to prohibited substances. 19-year-old Abdul of Corvus Drive in Stockton has been sentenced to 15 months in prison, suspended for 18 months after admitting his involvement in an incident that led to the death of Luke. Abdul was also ordered to complete 300 hours of unpaid work. According to the court, Abdul was driving the car that pursued Luke on the night of the incident. The court heard that the altercation started on Yarm High Street, where Luke was chased by a group of males in a vehicle. When they caught up with him, he was sprayed in the eyes with a noxious substance, which had a severe effect on him. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Robinson stated that the altercation had a devastating impact on Luke's family, who have been left without their son and brother. She added that the incident has caused immense pain and hardship for the family and that nothing can bring Luke back. However, now that the case has concluded, the family may find some closure and be able to move forward with their lives. Charges against 2 other individuals, 19-year-old Ryan Alp and 18-year-old Hamada Sith, were dropped. To summarize the case, Chris Atkinson of the Crown Prosecution Service made a statement after the sentencing in October 2020. He stated that although Tahim Abdul were found guilty, the focus remains on Luke Jobson's family, who may find this time particularly challenging. The prosecution successfully proved that both men were involved in an altercation with Luke before his death. However, it is essential to note that there is no evidence to suggest that their actions directly caused the tragic events that followed the attack. 37-year-old Perry Griffin lived in Dothan, Alabama in 2007. He was an employee for Panhandle Converters and Scrap. During the early morning hours of June 26, 2007, Perry was going out of town to purchase items for business. He had $35,000 in cash on him. This was something he had done numerous times before. As Perry was preparing to leave the parking lot of the business, 2 suspects armed with weapons confronted him. When Perry resisted, the physical struggle ensued. One of the suspects then fired his weapon and fatally wounded Perry. The two suspects fled from the scene on foot after collecting the large sum of money in Perry's possession. Witnesses who heard the shot fired called police, who arrived on the scene. Evidence recovered from the scene led investigators to believe the suspects may have intended to physically restrain Perry and possibly take him to a different location. Investigators also believed a third suspect was waiting for the other two in a vehicle nearby. Investigators worked diligently around the clock on the case. Persons of interest were developed and countless interviews were conducted. Due to a lack of sufficient evidence, no arrests were made and the case went cold for some time. Then, in June of 2020, new information surfaced on the case. Several people that were interviewed in the initial investigation were re-interviewed. The original case file was reviewed meticulously. As a result of this recent investigation, and with efforts during the original investigation, sufficient evidence was gathered to allow for 3 arrests to be made in connection to the case. 48-year-old Kevin Sean Thornton was arrested. He was 35 years old when the crime took place. Thornton was also an employee at Panhandle Converters and Scraps. 47-year-old Jesse Jerome Swain was also arrested. He was 34 years old back in 2007, and like Thornton and Perry, he also worked for Panhandle Converters and Scraps. Then lastly, 30-year-old Kendrick Fitzgerald Bryant was arrested. He is currently in the Alabama prison for an unrelated crime. He was just 17 years old at the time of the crime. He did not work at the Panhandle Converters and Scrap, but his connection was through Swain. Investigators have not yet publicly announced what exactly led to the arrests. We also don't know why these men did what they did, but it clearly seems like a robbery gone wrong. The Dothan Police Department would like to thank many agencies for their assistance in this case, to include the Federal Bureau of Investigations and the U.S. Marshals Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force. On August 12, 1986, a woman's body was found in a swamp in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The woman had been assaulted and strangled. She was quickly identified as 22-year-old Lisa Holstead. Lisa had a 5-year-old son named Jeremy. Investigators collected a DNA sample from her body belonging to the person that took her life. Other than the DNA sample, investigators did not have much to go on and the case went cold. A DNA profile could be created for the sample. Green Bay investigators then sent the profile to a testing company. The testing company made use of genetic genealogy to create a list of relatives of the suspect. Investigators were then able to narrow it down until they finally found a man who they believed was responsible. Green Bay Police Detective David Graff described the process as basically doing a family tree in reverse. Even though investigators were sure they identified the man they were looking for, they had to be 100% sure. On September 15, 2020, investigators collected beer cans and cigarettes that were used by the suspect. These items were then sent for DNA testing. The results of these tests confirmed that this man's DNA matched the DNA that was found at the crime scene. His name was Luke Griffin. He had a long history of violence against women and children. Griffin was arrested in 1981 for an unrelated crime. This was unfortunately before police started collecting DNA. In 1986, when he took Lisa's life, he was in the Green Bay area because he was out on parole. In October of 2020, 65-year-old Griffin was arrested for what he did to Lisa. He was taken to the Brown County Jail. Lisa's son Jeremy, who was just 5 years old when his mom was taken away from him, had this to say about the arrest. "It's the same thing the whole family wants for the last 34 years. I just wish my grandma was alive to be able to see this. Sometimes I'm happy. Sometimes you get a little more sad. I really don't know how to explain it," he says. "You don't want to get your hopes up way too high and have them come crashing down. But I feel pretty good overall about it." Lisa's mother passed away a few years ago, never learning who took her daughter's life. The judge set a cash bond of $1 million. M. Griffin's court hearing was set for December 10, 2020. In February of 2021, Griffin wrote a letter to a local television station where he claims his rights have been violated. According to him, investigators are falsely accusing him of the crime. He also raised an issue with a $1 million bond. He says that he is a 65-year-old who has ties to the community for more than 40 years. In November of 2021, A trial date was set for February 28, 2022. The trial is still currently ongoing. The case of Diana D. Aiello. Diana Aiello was born in 1959 in Tustin, a suburb of Los Angeles. Her father was in the military and her mother worked at a local garment factory. At the age of 19, Diana met Kevin Green when Diana was harassed by several men at a bar. Kevin intervened and chased the men away. In gratitude, Diana bought Kevin a drink. They went on a date a few days later, and their relationship quickly progressed. Kevin was in the process of divorcing his first wife. Kevin and Diana moved in together for a while, and Diana became pregnant. After Kevin's divorce was finalized, they got married. While waiting for their daughter to be born, they rented an apartment in Tustin. Kevin worked as a helicopter mechanic at a nearby Marine Corps base, while Diana stayed home to prepare for the baby's arrival, having previously worked with her mother in a garment factory. By late September 1979, Diana was nearly 9 months pregnant. On the evening of September 30th, Kevin and Diana got into an argument after watching a movie together. The impending birth of their daughter had put a strain on their relationship. To calm down and avoid escalating the situation, Kevin decided to drive to a nearby restaurant. About 40 minutes after the incident, Kevin called the local police department to report that his wife, Diana, had been shot and needed immediate medical attention. Police arrived on the scene shortly after receiving the call. When they entered the apartment, they found Diana lying on the bed, covered in blood, with a head wound that appeared to be a gunshot wound. However, upon closer examination, paramedics later determined that the wound was actually caused by blunt force trauma. When the police checked on Diana, found her alive and provided first aid until the ambulance arrived, they asked Kevin to leave the room. After the paramedics took over, they carefully transported Diana to the hospital. Meanwhile, the police asked Kevin to stay behind to give a statement. He told police that he and his wife had been arguing, so he decided to leave the apartment to calm down and buy some burgers at a fast food restaurant. In his haste, he realized he had left his keys inside, but chose not to go back to get them. Instead, he locked the door and went to his car. As Kevin drove away from the apartment complex, he noticed a truck with its back door open and an African-American man walking back and forth toward the truck. It was late, around 2 a.m. He drove to the fast food restaurant he frequented, but it was busy, so he went to another location a few miles away. After buying a burger, he drove home, which took 40 minutes. When he arrived, he found the front door wide open. He rushed inside and found his wife, Diana, covered in blood. He immediately called the police. Kevin's story had some suspicious signs, but when the police checked the fast food bag, they found the food was still warm and the receipt confirmed the time and place of purchase, supporting Kevin's story. As a result, the police allowed Kevin to go to the hospital, but not before asking him to provide a blood sample for further investigation. Although DNA analysis was not available at the time, experts could still compare the blood found at the crime scene with Kevin's blood type. When Diana arrived at the hospital, doctors determined that her head wound was not caused by a gunshot. Instead, it was likely inflicted by a small, heavy object. Unfortunately, Diana fell into a coma. The medical team worked diligently for several hours to save both her and her unborn child. After many hours of intense care, they were able to stabilize Diana's condition, but she still required surgery. During the investigation, police asked medical experts to determine whether Diana had been sexually assaulted. The experts confirmed that Diana had indeed been sexually assaulted, finding semen on her body. However, Kevin testified that he and Diana had had sex just hours before the argument. Diana and Kevin's family stayed in the hospital all night, and the next morning, the baby's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse. Doctors tried, but the baby did not survive. Although Diana remained in a coma, her chances of survival had improved. However, doctors warned that she could suffer long-term effects. Although Kevin had an alibi, police were not quick to clear him due to several inconsistencies in his story. He had an argument with Diana just hours before the attack, left his front door unlocked, and spent much of the time on a quick trip to a fast food restaurant. His claim of seeing a suspicious person near his home at night also raised suspicions. However, there was no concrete evidence linking Kevin to the crime. Police are investigating another suspect in a series of similar crimes in the area. A year earlier, a series of break-ins and assaults had occurred in Tustin and surrounding areas with similar modus operandi. In December 1978, a 17-year-old girl was killed after being beaten with a piece of wood and sexually assaulted. For months later, a 21-year-old woman was murdered and sexually assaulted. In July 1979, a woman was attacked in her apartment but survived, although she was in a coma for several weeks. Her testimony provided no new leads. Prior to Diana's attack, a similar attack occurred in September 1979, when a 34-year-old woman was murdered. A series of crimes occurred, all with striking similarities to the attack on Diana. The police believed they were dealing with a serial killer and focused their efforts on capturing him. To address the growing concern, the police decided to issue a public warning through the media, specifically targeting women living alone and those living in low-rise apartments, who appeared to be the serial killer's favorite targets. The warning caused panic, and in response, the police increased night patrols in the area. The police began by interviewing and soon received their first leads. Several of the victims' neighbors reported seeing a suspicious white man with thick black hair near their home. Although the description was somewhat vague, the police were able to identify several men who matched and investigate them. Unfortunately, these leads did not lead to any cases. A week after Diana was attacked, her doctors informed her loved ones that she had finally regained consciousness. However, there was a serious concern. Diana was unable to speak or remember anything. According to her doctors, her brain was still recovering. Around the same time, another attack occurred in Tustin. An unknown assailant broke into the apartment of a 24-year-old woman, striking her multiple times with a piece of wood and sexually assaulting her. Tragically, the victim died and the police were once again unable to catch the perpetrator. Diana spent several days in the hospital, recovering from her injuries. During this time, her mind slowly cleared, but she had lost almost all of her memory. Doctors told her family that her memories might return, but warned them not to remind her of anything, letting her remember on her own. After being stabilized, Diana was discharged from the hospital and her family took her home. Her husband Kevin had to work at the military base, so Diana was sent to live with Diana's parents. 2 weeks later, another attack occurred in the city, similar to the one on Diana. This time, the attacker killed a 17-year-old girl. Diana began attending physical therapy sessions and her condition gradually improved. Although she still could not speak or remember the attack, a breakthrough occurred 6 weeks later during a therapy session. The doctor asked Diana if she could remember who attacked her. To the doctor's surprise, Diana suddenly pointed to her wedding ring. The doctor shared this information with Diana's mother when she came to pick her up. Diana's mother asked her daughter if her husband, Kevin, was the one who attacked her, and Diana nodded. Diana's mother immediately took her to the police station to speak with the chief. After asking Diana a few more questions, the police confirmed that she remembered her attacker and identified him as her husband, Kevin. This new information dramatically changed the course of the investigation. Police suspected that Diana's attack was related to a series of similar incidents in the area committed by a serial offender. However, Kevin matched the suspect's description, leading police to question whether Kevin could be the culprit behind these attacks. The police asked Diana and her mother to pretend that Diana had not recovered her memory and to return home with Kevin, but they agreed to do so. Meanwhile, the police kept a close watch on Kevin, monitoring his every move in the hope of finding evidence of a crime linked to the serial murders. Crime scene testing revealed evidence under Diana's fingernails, where they found bloody skin particles, in addition to the attacker's semen. After analyzing the evidence, police found a match between the attacker's blood type and Kevin's blood sample, indicating that Kevin was the one who attacked Diana. As for a motive, police suspect that Diana's refusal to have sex with Kevin may have prompted the attack. Although Kevin insists that they had sex earlier that night, the police spoke to Diana, and she remembered the attack clearly, confirming that Kevin was her killer. During the conversation, her mother expressed that they could no longer live with Kevin, and the police decided to arrest him. To protect Diana's family, Kevin was arrested at a store instead of at their home. Despite his arrest, Kevin maintained his innocence. Preparations for the trial lasted 10 months, during which time Diana's health gradually improved. She regained her ability to speak. Diana was cleared of the charges, and her husband was found guilty of assaulting her. Kevin's defense team tried to use his fast food alibi, but it was not enough to disprove Diana's testimony. As a result, Kevin was convicted in November 1980 of the child's murder and assault on Diana. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Police learned that 2 similar crimes had occurred in their district before Kevin was arrested, but both victims survived. Although the identity of the attacker remains unknown, these incidents raised suspicions that Kevin was involved in other crimes. The attacks stopped abruptly after Kevin was arrested. After Kevin's sentencing, Diana promptly filed for divorce, which Kevin did not contest. Diana then focused on her recovery. When Kevin became eligible for parole, the committee denied his request, a decision that was repeated 3 more times. The serial killer case remained unsolved until 1996, when police reopened the investigation. Semen samples from the victims, which had been stored in a laboratory, were retested. Police wanted to determine who the culprit was, and DNA analysis yielded a surprising result. Gerald Parker, a man arrested the same year as Kevin, was found to have a DNA match to the serial murders. After the DNA match confirmed Parker's involvement in the serial murders, investigators re-examined the attack on Diana. Parker and Kevin worked together on a military base, and Parker owned a dark-colored van, similar to the one described in the attacks. During his initial police interview, Kevin reported seeing an African-American man near a dark-colored truck in front of their home on the day of the attack. This information led police to consider the possibility that Parker was involved in the attack on Diana. While Kevin was in jail, the local prosecutor updated him on the progress of the bedroom basher serial murder investigation. The prosecutor asked Kevin to provide a DNA sample, which he quickly agreed to. While the DNA analysis was underway, police visited Parker in prison to discuss the case. Although they had not yet formally charged him with the attacks, they hoped to gather more information. Parker initially denied any involvement in the crimes, so detectives focused their questioning on the attack on Diana. During questioning, Parker revealed that on the night of the incident, he drove his truck to Kevin's house, intending to circle the neighborhood, looking through the ground floor windows for a victim. However, this time, he heard screaming coming from Kevin and Diana's apartment, and when Kevin left the house, Parker noticed that the door was unlocked, so he waited a few minutes before entering the apartment and attacking Diana. Parker revealed that he did not know Kevin's wife because they worked in different areas of the military base. He also confessed to committing 6 murders and 3 non-fatal attacks. After Parker's confessions, DNA evidence confirmed his guilt in Kevin's innocence. The prosecutor quickly moved to overturn Kevin's sentence, and he was released from prison after 16 years. The case has caused widespread outrage, not only because an innocent man spent nearly half his life in prison, but also because it took so long for police to identify the real killer. When Kevin was released, the state of California paid him $10,000 in compensation, but relatively small amount. Years later, he received an additional $100 for each day he spent in prison, totaling $620,000. Despite Kevin's exoneration, his wife Diana initially refused to believe he was innocent. She had previously claimed that Kevin was her only attacker. However, after DNA evidence from her body matched Parker's, she changed her story. Diana reported that Kevin attacked her before leaving the apartment, and then Parker entered and attacked her as well. However, Parker said that when he entered the house, Diana was lying on the bed without any injuries or signs of distress. He also admitted to hitting her on the head. Diana's family proposed an alternative theory suggesting that Kevin might have conspired with Parker to commit the crime, which would explain why Kevin left the house that night, leaving the door open. However, Parker denied knowing Kevin, pointing out that the military base was large and many people didn't know each other personally. Parker denied knowing Kevin. Kevin also denied any involvement with Parker, insisting that he would never harm Diana or their unborn daughter. He explained that he left the door open because he didn't want to go back to get the keys after their argument, and he still blames himself for that decision. As for Parker, he was sentenced to death in 1999, but this sentence has yet to be carried out. After years of waiting on death row, California imposed a moratorium on executions, and as a result, Parker remains incarcerated to this day. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.